Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this week's edition of Inside the Zone State Championship style.
Bring it.
Yep, as we are heading down to Indianapolis. Not Friday, unfortunately. None of our local teams making it in the evens classes, or the odds classes.
Yeah.
The evens class is showing out, though. We're going to be talking mostly about East Noble in the 4A state title game. We'll also touch on Eastbrook playing in the 2A state title game for back-to-back years. But let's start off with East Noble because you were up there on Friday night.
Yep.
I got to the game. Our photographer was there the whole time, but I got to the game, and it was 10-0, and immediately it was 17-0.
Yeah.
And the air kind of went out of...
it was quiet in the crowd.
For as many people as were there, the air kind of went out of the stadium, but East Noble never gave up, kind of showed the resolve of a champion, and showed you why they are playing for the state title, able to rally against a good Hobart team and win that. What was your big takeaway from semi-state before we head on to the state championship preview?
Well, even when it was 17-0, I never felt, A, that East Noble was out of the game, and B, I felt like they were still the better team. They were just making mistakes. You know, the fumble by Bailey Parker, the blocked punt, an interception by Bailey Parker. It was more self-inflicted wounds than anything. And I felt, okay, if East Noble can right the ship, start making some plays, they can still win this football game, which they were able to do. And so despite it being 17-0, I never felt at that point that they were out of the football game, and then they proved that the final three quarters.
To me, that Justin Marcellus touchdown was huge after the pick six. I want to say pick seven, but you know, to make it 17-7 because you're not guaranteed any more points in that half, and you're like, you know, as bad as we played at the beginning, we're only going to be down 2 scores at the half at home with this crowd, and yet they go out and get another field goal, and you're like, we played about as bad as we could for a quarter and a half, and we're only down 7 points. I mean, that was absolutely huge, the Marcellus touchdown and then the field goal to give them a little momentum heading into the half.
Yeah, Painter hit 2 big field goals in that game. That one you mentioned, and then later in the game to make it a 5-point lead, which really forced Hobart to go all the way down the field and try to score a touchdown. They got down to the 20-25. They're in shape to at least attempt a field goal at that point late in the game without that Painter field goal. So even before they went into halftime, you felt like the momentum had really switched. Early in the middle of the second quarter, and then after halftime, it just steamrolled. And give Hobart credit, they stayed in it, still had the ball to make a play there late. But man, after they got ahead. Even when they scored that long 81-yard touchdown, you felt, man, it was just like a momentary hiccup because all the momentum was with East Noble. And the score, I felt, was less indicative of how that game went in terms of the dominance of East Noble than what we really saw because the mistakes that East Noble made and also the plays I think Hobart made here and there in the second half to keep it close.
To me, the momentum swung mostly on that safety where you were like, oh, they're going to come back and win this game.
Yeah.
I know, okay, they went up. It was 17-17, then it was 19-17, but it was like, right at the beginning, 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you're like, they're going to win this game.
Yeah.
They're going to come back from 17 down and win this game.
Yeah.
That safety was just huge because it looked like they had got a safety earlier in that series, but there was no doubt about this one deep into the backfield of Hobart. And, man, you could just tell the whole entirety of the momentum had shifted at that point when it came to that game.
Well, what was it, the third play of that series? So they barely got out of the end zone first play. Second play barely got out of the end zone. We felt like that was a safety. And then the third, he had barely taken the handoff before he was hit by like 3 guys. He didn't even close to come out of the end zone. So, the momentum, it just continued to go East Noble's way. You felt, man, when Bailey Parker started making plays, Hayden Jones, Justin Marcellus, that defense was all over. Bailey Parker throws the couple picks, but he makes up with it 2 interceptions of his own. So it's typical East Noble, man, just rolling along, and they got one more challenge to try to win a state title.
Yeah, and I'll say that I think the front seven for East Noble doesn't get enough credit because the self-inflicted errors early on in that game really set up those points when Hobart had to drive the field against them, other than the one play that broke away for 71 yards, I think it was. They didn't really get a lot.
Right.
Like, East Noble's defense up front, the safety was the manifestation of that, but it was like, if they didn't give them a short field, they couldn't drive the full length of the field on them.
That was the thing, too, is that the Hobart team was really good running the football, but they never really got a lot of traction on the ground. And you felt, man, if East Noble can get up a couple touchdowns, I don't think Hobart can pass its way back in the game. That's why that long touchdown run was so surprising by Johnston, because you felt, man, I don't think they can pass the ball to score big touchdowns to get back into this one, but they were able to cut it with that run. So you felt maybe Hobart hangs around. But, man, they were ineffectual in that passing game, except maybe that final drive where they were able to string some passes together where you felt East Noble was in that prevent to not allow any big plays behind them.
Well, for the second year in a row in 4A, it's going to be a Northeast Indiana team versus a team from Evansville. Last year it was Dwenger in an instant classic, 4 overtime beating Evansville Central.
Yeah.
This year it's Evansville Memorial, a team that beat top-ranked Evansville Central. This is the one thing that if you're East Noble might give you a little bit of pause. Evansville Central ranked number 1. Evansville Memorial was ranked number 3 in the last AP poll before the postseason hit. And this is a team that beat that number 1 ranked team 38-14 in what was a road game.
Yeah.
So Evansville Memorial, no joke. No joke and no fluke.
Balanced offensively. They're not, you can't look at it and say, okay, they pass for a lot, they run for a lot. This is what they do. They're very balanced offensively. I think defensively they're smothering as well. They've got, a kid with 15 and a half sacks on the year, so they're going to be playing very well defensively. It just comes down to the Bailey Parker factor. Can Evansville Memorial put together a game plan to slow down Bailey Parker? Can East Noble avoid the shooting themselves in the foot like they did last week? Is Evansville Memorial a team that you cannot make those mistakes with and come back and win the game? I think it's a step up in competition from Hobart, and I think you have to limit those first half mistakes.
Yeah, you take a look at the Mount Vernon game last week. Evansville Memorial won it 28-3 and really did it with a variety. You mentioned the balance. It wasn't so much that they did anything except run the football well. They threw for under 90 yards, but they had a guy rush for 96 yards, another guy rush for 96 yards, a guy run for 49, and a guy run for 41. So you're talking about 2 guys that almost went for 100 and 2 other guys that almost went for 50.
Yeah.
It's a balance within the running game that concerns you, whereas if you played, when you played Mississinawa, it was the Cade Campbell show.
Yeah.
You knew, yes, they're going to run the football, but it's basically going to be this guy. These guys, spread the ball a little bit out more in the running game, so you can't key on one guy quite as much. How does East Noble go in and try to stop that, knowing that it is different than when they played Mississinawa, even though it's run-based?
Yeah, it's tough. You can't key on one particular person, whereas if you turned it around, you look at Evansville Memorial saying Bailey Parker, right? Mm-hmm. So we slow down Bailey Parker, we got a good chance to win this game. But can they do that or not? But East Noble, I think, has been able to step up with each challenge that they've faced in terms of offense, whether a team comes out in the spread, where they come out in the read option, where they come out in the wing T. They can adjust their defense accordingly, and it's just another challenge this week in terms of Evansville Memorial on the biggest stage in the state of Indiana in football.
When you take a look at East Noble's history, year in and year out, they're a solid program. It's a tough place to play. They always get fans. Friday was absolutely no exception.
Crazy.
Best fan base that I'd seen this season in terms of just like the atmosphere for the game, and the stands were full, but all the way around was full. I imagine all of Kentville, Noble County, everywhere is going to be down there on Saturday at 3:30 for the kick. But can they draw anything from 2003? Because that's the last time that they made it to state. They were a high-scoring offense that year.
Yeah.
They got shut out by Indianapolis Roncalli. Mm-hmm. The one thing that seems weird is 2003 to me, I'm an old guy, I guess, doesn't seem like it was that long ago, right? And yet these kids, if you're a senior at 18 years old, you were barely born. You were like 1, 2, 3 years old.
Yeah.
So these guys don't remember any of that. But is there any carryover of what they can look to based on that game, or do they just see it as a trophy in the trophy case and move on?
I think you see it as a trophy in the trophy case because, the coaches weren't there. Mm-hmm. Players definitely weren't there, obviously. Some fans, I'm sure, will remember going down there, and hopefully they're thinking, man, at least we can score in this game, unlike the first time we went down there.
That is true.
So, or the second time they went down there. But, you hope that you see, in terms of East Noble going down there, the confidence they've been able to take in each and every game. Luke Amstutz said, on Friday, look, we were down 14-0 at Plymouth. We were down 17-0 against Hobart, and these guys just keep playing football. So you hope that they just keep playing football while they're playing in a capacity that has 70,000, 80,000 seats in it. I think you need to keep level-headed when you're playing for a state championship on Saturday.
Outside of Bailey Parker versus the Evansville Memorial defense, what is the next biggest key, or what is, in your eyes, the X factor in this game that maybe people aren't thinking about that will be something that decides the state championship game Saturday?
I think up front, particularly that offensive line, can they open up some holes for Justin Marcellus? We forget about Marcellus so much, or maybe not forget about him, but maybe marginalize his efforts because of what Bailey Parker does. But Marcellus has rushed for over 1,100 yards this season. I mean, he's a phenomenal football player. So I think if you can have that rush game to mesh with the read option game of Bailey Parker, they mix in the read option, they also go 5 wide, they throw it downfield. I think a balanced offensive attack helps you very well takes some of the burden off Bailey Parker, because I think Evansville Memorial is capable of taking some of the things away that Bailey Parker likes to do, particularly downfield. So you're going to need some other things to mix in. I think Justin Marcellus is that guy.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it's Nick Munson, because didn't know a whole lot about him. And then up at the game on Friday night, you take a look at, you try to take away Gage Ernsberger on the outside. You try to take away Hayden Jones, making plays, and then maybe stop Parker and Marcellus from running the ball. It felt like it was Nick Munson. Maybe didn't make the big plays, but he made the plays that moved the chains. You know what I mean? Like little screens and just good hands, 7 yards here, 8 yards there. Convert a third down, convert a second down, and he was kind of an X factor. So maybe he's the guy that when they try to marginalize everybody else, he's the guy that the field opens
and just
up
a
for.
sophomore, right? Making plays like
young
that.
guy.
I mean, dang,
kind of grown into his own.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think that's the thing with East Nobles. They have so many weapons, right? You take away ABC, they got D, or so. But I think all eyes on Bailey Parker. I think if East Noble does not turn the football over, which they did 5 times last Friday, how many times do you see a team turn the ball over 5 times and win? I don't think we can have that on Saturday and expect an East Noble win, but I think they bounce back, play some good football.